ChatGPT. Okay, so everyone in the entire world is talking about this right now. You've probably played around with it. If you haven't, it's worth going to check out, so I recommend you do because it's pretty awesome. And as a programmer, I see a lot of content coming out right now that's people talking about, like, is this going to replace everyone's jobs? Like, I'm trying to explore some ways that I can try to take advantage of it. And one thing that I've thought of that I'm really bad at that I think that AI can help me with is content creation for this game that I've been trying to build on the side for about 15 to 20 years now. And it's something that when I go to program parts of this game, the content piece just never really gets attention because, to be honest, I like writing software and I'm really bad at being, I don't know, creative when it comes to putting content together for it. So what I mean by content in this case actually is like lore and history and things like that. I have a lot of ideas, but when it comes to actually, writing out like a story, for example, the story writing I'm very poor at and it takes a lot of energy for me to do, but it's also something that's important and it needs attention. So what I'm thinking about doing is using AI to help with that, and I wanted to create a video about what I'm thinking of doing. So before diving into any more, if you could do me a favor and like the video if you're enjoying the content so far and the concept, if you could subscribe to the channel, that'd be awesome, and leave a comment below and I'll get back to you if you have any questions or thoughts. All right, so I am at the OpenAI playground where you can actually try out some of these capabilities that they offer on the API directly in the browser and play around with it to see how things are going to look. So my thought process that I would like to do is basically, I believe the concept would be called fine-tuning a model. And I would like to basically over time train a model that's already, in existence. If you consider ChatGPT, for example, knows a lot about the world already. I would like to start training it on this fictional world that I am trying to create. And that way, if I can tell it some of the history and things like that, I can ask it to get creative and maybe start creating the skeleton of some short stories or generate just some more generic pieces that, from my perspective, would just take a lot of my time to create from scratch. And if it's able to do it, then I can go refine them and polish them after. So my thought is that if I can train it on information about this world, then I can ask it for more information as an output. And then from there, over time, I can retrain it back into the model and basically let it totally understand like all of the lore and history for this game world. So I'm pretty excited about that. So on this playground page, what I'm able to do, to be completely transparent, I haven't played around with all the parameters yet, nor do I understand them in their entirety, but I want to dive into seeing what I'm able to do with what's available. So just for context, I'm going to jump back over to the pricing page to talk a little bit about what's going on here, and I'll zoom in a little bit. And the idea is that they have some different models that are available to use. And again, these are not the ChatGPT models. I think that's like it comes after the DaVinci model, if I'm not mistaken. And it's definitely significantly better. But my point is that I want to play with the API to get started. And from my perspective, I probably just want to go as cheap as I can to start, but once things are working and I'm kind of, if I can prove that the concept works, then I would kind of go up to a higher cost model and essentially retrain it on that. And just for some context, the reason I'm saying that is that if I started with something like DaVinci, we're talking about like orders of magnitude more expensive for cost, right? They talk about, I think, 1K tokens roughly translating to 750 words of information. If I'm talking about building out the lore for an entire game universe, that's going to be a lot of text. And I'd rather try to prototype some parts of it in an inexpensive way, and then when it's good to go, I can say, look, I'm gonna bite the bullet. I'm going to switch to the expensive one, train it up, and then I feel content about the strategy that I have. And I'm going to paste in what I would consider a simple snippet of lore, context for my game world. The game is called Massaris. It has a continent in the game world that is called Massaris. And on the bottom portion of that continent, there is a desert. So I'm going to paste that in here. So it just says there is a desert called the Solitaris Desert in the southern portion of the continent of Massaris in a fantasy world. So it's actually kind of a creative statement. It's not what I want, but I'm not totally, I don't know, upset by that. So maybe I should do something like medieval fantasy world. I wonder if I do that, if it will not maybe go right to machines and stuff. So let's just give that a quick try. The desert is located near a small town and is known for its vast and sand-filled desert. I mean, that is weird, but the desert is also the location of a number of large salt pads, which give the town its name. Okay, so I don't like this at all, but it didn't talk about machines. So it's interesting, at least, that the concept so far is such that I can give it some information and it's going to give me something back that's creative, right? And for context as well, like I would never use this to basically just blindly go generate all the content for my lore and stuff like that, because that would end up having some ridiculous machines and salt pad towns and stuff like that. But it at least might serve as a basis for going, like, if I give it a bunch of information, can it start to tell me useful things? So let's go jump over to the most expensive model and just see if we get something dramatically better or something like that, right? Let's go down here. I lost my cursor. There we go. The Solitaris Desert is an expansive wasteland that stretches across the southern part of the continent of Massaris. Oh man, like this already reads super cool, right? It is a barren, inhospitable place filled with sand dunes, rocky outcroppings, and sparse vegetation. It's home to a number of dangerous creatures. We like this, right? It's a fantasy role-playing game, such as giant scorpions, giant spiders, and venomous snakes. Cool, okay. The desert is also known to be home to several tribes of nomadic humans. I mean, this is neat. Cool. It's a treacherous place, scorching heat during the day, near freezing at night. Extreme danger. Few travelers ever attempt to cross it. Yeah, like, cool. Like, and then it's created actually a city, right? So those that do, however, can find their way to the city of Cathal, I'm assuming is how you might pronounce that. Maybe I should ask the AI, which lies on the edge of the desert and is the only known city in the area. Very cool. So infinitely better than the cheapest model. And that's okay because, again, I want to look at, and we haven't got to the actual API calls yet, but I want to look at being able to basically feed it a lot of lore that already exists and then have it get creative a little bit more beyond that. So, for example, because I have not told it, it doesn't know that it's that there are multiple cities in the desert. I have not created one that's called Cathal. There are a few different other cities like that. So I wonder if I gave it more information. We should jump into some of the API calls that we can use from OpenAI here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead here and get a new project created in Visual Studio. It's, of course, going to be in C# here, so I'm going to call it LoreBot. Because for my purposes, I want to use it for lore creation. But as we're going through this, I mean, basically we're going to be creating a lightweight C# API to use OpenAI APIs. I mean, what better way to get started with doing something like this than asking ChatGPT itself, how do we talk to your APIs? And I've gone ahead and done that, and it's kind of cool. So here is the response we get. Okay, so it actually printed out the code in C# to go do this. Um, Now, what I have not done is I have not gone and actually confirmed which API calls and stuff we want to make. But this is pretty awesome because if you've worked with web APIs in general, you're going to need some type of class to be able to make the requests out to the internet. So there's your HTTP client in this case. You can see that it is down here. I can't highlight because it just took this picture here, but in this section where it's creating a request, it's actually formatting things to be, to the spec of the API, adding in your API key for authorization, using the HTTP client to actually send the request, get the response back, and then it uses Newtonsoft to deserialize it, which is super cool. So I think this is great. I have it pasted on my clipboard, so I'm going to go ahead and get started by dropping that directly in to our application here. Let me zoom back out a little bit. I don't think I have Newtonsoft installed. Let me go ahead and do that. Newtonsoft. Oh, almost at 3 billion downloads. Incredible. Okay, let me get that. Thank you, ChatGPT, for generating this for us. But what I'm going to have to do is I'll need to get an API key. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just basically copy this generate text method because that was a good starting point. There's a lot of other things you could and should be doing if you're building an API like this, like good error handling and stuff like that. But we're just going to kind of get started with a copy of this one for uploading files. We're going to have to go look. I think we needed a purpose and we need a file. So I'm just going to quickly jump back over here. We can see, yeah, we need purpose and file like this. So purpose and file. I'll jump back over. So purpose, and that needs to be equal to fine tune. If I recall correctly, fine tune, and then the actual file. And I think it needs to look like that. I haven't run this yet, so we're about to see how broken it actually is when I go to try it. And then I was thinking the response that comes back is got a few different parameters on it, but for right now, I only really care about the ID. I mean, what I would probably do if I was building out a more thoughtful API is actually like API wrapper to the OpenAI API. I mean, is that I would probably have like a DTO, a data transfer object that maps to the response, and I think it has like the file size and the ID and stuff. But I honestly only care about the ID. And for error handling now, I'm just gonna let it blow up when it blows up. So if it's wrong, we'll get an exception, and that's okay for now. We'll sort it out. But I think I just want to get the ID. Oops, I can't see where I'm typing. And upload file. I'll call it async because I think generally I like doing this kind of stuff. And that might be okay. I have no idea, so we'll find out. All right, so I went to go debug some stuff and realized I totally mixed up about the API requirements for this upload file async part and that it's using multi-part form data. So I don't have a ton of experience with putting together good web requests and stuff like this in C#. So this is going to be a bit hack together, but couple things that I totally messed up. So just wanted to call that out. I'm going to come right back to it. But before I forget, the JSON structure that we had, I had a small typo in it, and I had put a comma at the end of the line. You can just kind of see it right by my beside my head here in the video, but I had left a comma in here because I originally structured the whole thing kind of like one big JSON object, and it's not supposed to be like that. So that comma's got to come out. That was one part. And then jumping back over to this API, if you recall, we had copied this whole method because I thought that that would be a good starting point for us. And it is, and it also isn't. So I had to change a bunch of stuff, but I also wanted to make sure the authorization was put in. I said, hey, screw that. We're not doing that every time. You'll notice it's gone from down here as well. I'm putting it right on our client as a default. So any other things we need to add, it'll put the authorization header in there for us. When it comes to uploading a file, this is the structure we're going to be using. You can read more about this online. I did a quick Stack Overflow just to get some thoughts. So you can make multi-part form data. We need to have purpose set as fine-tune, and then I'm pretty sure there's two parameters here, and there's name and file name. So I think name is for the actual for the form data perspective, and file name is another parameter we can use here. So I have them both as file because I'm not sure what we need to do or what we can change. But let's go ahead and run this. Let me press F5 here. All right, we'll step over this guy. We get our API instance instantiated. So that means that we've also set up a HTTP client with headers as default for authorization, which is awesome. We'll step in here, make a new form, add the two parts to it. Just a quick note too, I am using stream content here. This way I don't have to go read in the whole file. This one's pretty small, but if I had a whole wiki worth of content, I'd have to pull that all into memory at once. And we can leverage streaming in this case to do that more effectively on memory usage. And then we will do a post, and we're hitting that route that we took off of their API page with our form passed into it. We wait a second there, so something happened, and let's check the response string. Awesome, we don't have a failure. Let me open that. Sorry, the text is tiny, but says object file. We have an ID on there. Awesome, it says it's for fine tune. File name, oh, that looks like that's probably this second file, I bet. We should try seeing if we can change that, because that would be kind of cool. That's the number of bytes, the creation date, the status, and there's no detail, so that's cool. So the next line here puts that into a dynamic object for us. There's lots of information on the internet if you want to check out what dynamic actually does. Some people don't like using it. That's cool. You can do whatever you'd like. But we're gonna pull ID off of there. And just for a brief note, like what dynamic is allowing us to do is that I didn't actually go create a class anywhere. I mean, you can see all the code here in front of us. I didn't create a class anywhere that had the type information that we kind of see present on this set of data. I didn't go make that. So dynamic is allowing us to actually say .id and get a property or a field called ID off of this object without having to go create the type anywhere. So like one of the only times I ever find it valuable is kind of stuff like this. Otherwise, you might go handcraft classes that map to API responses. lots of different ways to do stuff. I generally don't like to say right and wrong, so it's kind of whatever fits your needs. So we can pull off the ID. If I step over, nice, it didn't throw an exception, console write line, and we'll read. So, boom. There is our first API call to OpenAI's API. I said it right. Fine tune. Okay, so let's see what happens. We got to just double checking things right. We're posting again. That's the URL because I copied it right from the site. We made sure to have this. We're serializing this payload, which I think has what we need. This was the only mandatory thing, I believe. I got a 200 back. That's good news. Oh, look at all this juicy information. Awesome. And now we have an ID. It starts with the FT prefix, so we know it's a fine tune. So far, so good. Okay, next step, we're going to want to check the status of our fine tune because like we talked about earlier, it's going to be a job that runs. So yet another API we call. Just going to do a quick check up here, but it's a get, not a post, which we had before. We still need authorization, but it looks like the only parameter we have is right in the URL itself. And that was the last thing we were printing to the console. So we got it. And this one should be pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the code again. I'm going to do the thing I do where I just copy a method because I'm lazy. And let's copy this one. But we do know, right, that we have a get, not a post. So we'll call it get fine. Oops, I somehow missed an entire G. Get fine tune. And we need the fine tune ID. We don't need this part anymore. Not for this call. We will change the actual API endpoint. We need to format this string, and that is going to have the fine tune ID. It will be a get now, not a post. And there is no content. We're just getting something. And that's how gets work. And then in terms of the response that we want, it had a lot of information about events and stuff, which right now is probably above my head. But I think just to get started, like maybe we just want to get the status coming back. And yeah, maybe let's go with that. This is where maybe we might do something like a more complex object that actually has the event information. Maybe it has different statuses. That's all cool. We're just kind of doing a rough approach here and experimenting. I call it rapid prototyping, right? So we'll pull the status off. If it says succeeded, great. If not, maybe this is where we actually want to do like a polling kind of thing. I have no idea yet, so let's find out. Get fine-tuned status. I got to spell that right too. And actually, for people watching, this is where pair programming and stuff is super handy because you have other people's eyes. Like, I bet you everyone watching this watched me type status incorrectly and was like, oh man, this guy's an idiot. But we make mistakes, right? And if you're pair programming or working together on stuff, other people can be catching little mistakes like that. So let's go ahead, jump back to the program here. I'm going to write job status equals await OpenAI API dot. And we're going to pass in the fine tune ID. And I think this will be kind of interesting. I'm going to I'm going to get a little bit wild here. I'm going to delete all the breakpoints. They're all gone. I'm curious because I have no idea how long these jobs actually take. I'm only giving it like 2 lines. I don't know if it basically comes back borderline instantaneous. We check the status and it's done. So let's find out. Maybe it says something other than succeeded, and that'll give us some insight about how we want to look at this. I'm also assuming this is going to work the first time, and it could totally just not. But let's try it. Pending. Cool. So I don't know why I was so excited about that. It was something then other than succeeded, right? So super neat. I bet you we can do a little loop here, and we won't get super aggressive. Maybe we'll wait I don't know, 5 seconds in between or something, and we can see the status of it changing over time. So let's do this. While true. And by the way, I'm just doing this quickly, so I'm not... Anytime I type while true, I usually feel sick to my stomach because I'm like, I've seen so many issues come up in production code where people have infinite loops and stuff like that because of stuff like a while true. But let me go do this and check the job status. If job status doesn't equal... Actually, let me get a little bit better here. Sorry. Is it succeeded? I can't recall. This example had it. Status succeeded, right? So if it succeeded, I probably want to have one for failed. So maybe instead of just that, I will say if it's pending. Maybe that's a better way to do it. If it's pending. Another thing I generally don't like to do is a thread.sleep. Even it's a little bit better to do like a wait, a task delay. How many milliseconds? Well, let's do 5 seconds. Right? Let's try that. The reason I like task delays is because you can do cancellation tokens and stuff in production code, so a little bit more flexible. So if it's pending, we're going to delay, and then we're going to go back to the top of the loop. Otherwise, we're going to break out. By the way, personal, just like style of mine, I guess, when I write loops and things like that, I generally like checking conditions and either continuing or breaking out kind of thing. Sometimes you'll see people get code that's like super nested with all their conditions and stuff, but not my style. So all done. But maybe let's get a little bit more informative here. Job status. We're going to pull this out. So we're going to pull the job status out, and then we'll be able to see the last status we get. So just to double check before we run this, it's smart enough to know that, what's it complaining about? Converting null. Oh, whatever. Okay. Yeah, unnecessary assignment. It knows we don't need to do it. Okay, so we're going to have a job status pulled out. So we're going to loop. This says loop for forever, right? But we're going to call the API that we were looking at. If it still says it's pending, we're going to sleep for 5 seconds. Once we wake up, because it was pending before, we're going to try again. And we're going to keep doing this basically for forever. I don't have a timeout built in. Unless we call this and we get something that's not pending. When that happens, and I don't know what all the possible answers are, we know succeeded as one. We'll say, like, it's all done, and here's what the status is. So let's rock and roll. And this part's super boring. So maybe what I could have done is done another console write line to see what's going on here, because I don't know how many seconds it's been, but it's been at least 5, and I'm getting antsy. So maybe let's do that just so we can see a little bit more information. And this is already assigned to me. We're going to need a solid video edit here to not have anyone waiting. Never mind. Look at that. It finished by the time I finished blabbing. So that's cool. I didn't need extra console write lines to show that it was still polling for us, but what did that take? Maybe 20 to 30 seconds of me blabbering nonsense? That's pretty cool. So far what we've been able to do is upload some training data. We've been able to do some fine tuning, like submit the job, and then actually poll and wait for the tuning to finish. So this is super exciting so far. What's next? Okay, I think this might work. Maybe we can save some time and comment all of this other stuff out for now. We know that we've been running this. Let's comment that out. We should be able to ask for the models and then get right into it. So, again, no idea if this is going to work yet. That's half the fun, right? Especially when you're recording a video to go on social media. So here's all the models like I was saying. Okay, and then at the bottom, our code is going to... Sorry, let me scroll down at the same time here. I know it's kind of tricky to follow. Our code does this last or default thing where it's looking for the last one that contains personal. So that's got to be this one. And then we can ask a question. So that's super cool. What did I teach it? Maybe I should say, like, where is Talvash located? No. Well, that's not right. There might also be another API for this too, because this is a completion one. Let's see. That's funny. I was so excited. I thought we had it. Well, no, I think that's right. Right, it's a completion. So what did it actually spit back here? Talvash is located in the city of whatever. What is the name of the city? Okay, maybe because we haven't actually run this API together, maybe let's have a look through the actual response that comes back. Okay, so let's try that. I'm going to copy this. So just so we're using the same input, right? Okay, so we'll ask the same question. Where is it located? And we have this response. Which is really weird and interesting, right? Sorry, that text is probably extremely tiny, but it keeps, like, we saw it actually output exactly what it said before. And it keeps kind of like rambling, like it says it's located in this random spot. It's actually the same output as before. And then it says, what's the name of the city? And then it keeps kind of going on. Like it asks, what's the name of the city again? What's the name of the city? What's the name of the city? So for some reason, it kept blabbing on about it. Now, that's really weird to me. I don't know why it's like that. So maybe what we could try doing is, we saw that when we were testing it online, the ADA model was a little bit wonky, right? So maybe let's try retraining it using DaVinci, perhaps, right? So I'm going to uncomment this. We will retrain. And where was that training code, or the fine tuning, right? we should actually make this a parameter. We'll use a base model ID. And then our code is going to break in program.cs, but we should be able to now put DaVinci here. Maybe let's try this and see if it is less chaotic. So I'm going to copy this again, just so we have the same reference text when we're asking it a question. And maybe one more thing we should do is print out what the current model is. Or, yeah, the latest model, right? Console write line, latest model. Latest model to use is going to be, I need a $sign there for our string interpolation, latest personal model ID. Okay. So we're going to run this. I don't know if the DaVinci training is going to take even longer, so I might need Jamal, the magic editor man, to edit this video and speed it up, but I unfortunately have to sit here and wait and watch it no matter what, so we'll see you in a sec. All right, so I took a quick break there for just a moment. I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and I think there just might be a time delay, but just a quick note, I changed the code a little bit just to filter out only personal models instead of all of those like 70 or so models. And now we just have this DaVinci one at the bottom. So suddenly it started showing up. I didn't change the ordering or anything. And if you recall, we just had the Ada one at the bottom here. Now it's DaVinci. So anyway, now we have the DaVinci one. I think I lost on my clipboard what I was typing before. So where is, I think it was this, where is tal vash located? Oh, I don't want to spoil it. I want to see it right in the console. No, totally, totally made up and not using what information we provided it. So interesting though. Perhaps it just means that we need a lot more actual training data, and that actually might make sense, right? The fact that if you're thinking about machine learning and AI, like training sets are enormous. So I think my original thought process was that I could use this kind of like ChatGPT when you ask it a question and it responds. It has some like conversational context here. So far, that's lacking in what I'm trying to do. But maybe I just have to play around with it and actually feed it more variations of like sample questions and give it the same content to go along with it. So anyway, I hope that this was at least useful for seeing some of the OpenAI API calls and how you can wrap them in C#. If I just jump back to the code here, you can see a lot of the time it's a really simple and sort of a consistent pattern we're using where we have this dynamic object we create really just to give us some flexibility with not recreating all of the types that they have in their API. And then we can serialize them to JSON super easily, right? So that's useful. And then we're mostly posting stuff, but we also put in some get methods as well. We move the authorization right up into one spot on the HTTP client. And then I would say the other major thing we did was, and this is, you can decide to do it however you'd like, but we use dynamic here to be able to deserialize and then pull other information off of this. So this is my first attempt at doing any of this, so it was a really interesting learning experience. I might poke around at some of the other APIs that are available, but so far my idea for being able to train and fine-tune a model looks like it either needs a ton more examples in the fine-tuning, or I need to look at some other different APIs and perhaps it will carry forward some of that context. Another thing to point out is that My thought process is coming from ChatGPT, where it seems to contain the context and the conversation. The models that we're using right now, like the DaVinci one, for example, is still way behind where ChatGPT is at. So perhaps it just doesn't have that capability, and I haven't actually tested that to begin with. So I might have just made some incorrect assumptions, but maybe this framework still could work, and maybe it's worth going forward with the concept. And once some of the more advanced models are available, I can look at doing something like this and pulling from the wiki I have for my knowledge base. So anyway, maybe that was interesting. Different take on some of the chat GPT stuff instead of just the doom and gloom about how it's going to replace all of us. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. And if you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.